Hello everyone, thank you for coming back. We're gonna talk about the third temple. If you see the news in Israel right now, there is no temple in Israel. And everybody is talking about making a temple for God. To understand this, we need to go to the books of history that say that the temple that was over there in Jerusalem was destroyed about 2,000 years ago. And the reason of the temple is to do sacrifice inside the temple. And those sacrifices because the people sins. So let's get what is sin. If we go to book of Genesis chapter 2 in the American Standard Version, verse 15, 16, and 17, we found the following. And Jehovah God took the man and put him into the garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it. And Jehovah God commanded the man, saying, Of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it. For in the day that thou eatest therefore thou shalt surely die. Because man sins, people die. And if we go to the book of Leviticus, we found that if we do sacrifice on the altar, the person is justified. But there is no altar right now. There is no temple. Let's see what happened really. From Adam and Eve all the time to the time of Moses, people were doing sacrifice in the open air. In the time of Moses, God says, no, you only can do sacrifice on this altar. And the altar was under a tent. In the time of David, God told David to build a house, but not him, but his son Solomon. We found this in the following. This is the first temple. And the first temple is a housing for the altar where sacrifices are made. And the sacrifice was necessary to be justified by work. But let's go. American Standard Version, 1 Kings chapter 6, 37 and 38. In the fourth year was the foundation of the house of Jehovah laid in the month Thiv. And in the 11th year and the month Bul, which is the 8th month, was the house finished, through all the parts thereof, in according to the fashion of it. So was the 7 years in building. So the first temple was built, but Israel sinned. The Babylonians came around, destroyed the temple. The Israel and the Jews were taken into exile. And when they come back, the temple was destroyed. So they need to build another temple. And God commanded to do another temple. Let's go and see it. American Standard Version, Book of Ezra, chapter 6, verse 14 and 15. And the elders of the Jews built it and prospered through the prophesying of Haggai the prophet and Zechariah, the son of Iddo. And they built it and finished it, according to the commandment of the God of Israel, and according to the decree of Cyrus and Darius and Artaxerxes, king of Persia. And this house was finished in the third day of the month Adar, which was in the 6th year of the reign of Darius king. I want you to say, according to the command of the God of Israel. So God commanded to construct the second temple. So what happened to the second temple? The second temple was destroyed by the Romans. I think it was a Roman general called Titus. And Jews living there were dispersed all over the world. But all this was prophesied by Jesus. Let's go and see what Jesus says about the temple. In Matthew 23, in the American Standard Version, Matthew chapter 23, verse 37, 38, and 39 says, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, that killest the prophets, and stoned them that are sent unto her, how often will I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chickens under her wings, and ye will not. Behold, your house is left unto you desolate. For I say unto you, ye shall not see me henceforth till you say, Blessed is he that comes in the name of the Lord. Here is telling that the house, the second temple, is abandoned by God. The reason it's abandoned is they abandoned Jesus, which Jesus is God, and he says, well, your house is being abandoned. And besides that, there is some theological problem. By Jesus dying, it's no longer necessary to do sacrifices. And we found this in the book of Hebrews. Let's go to the book of Hebrews. It says, American Standard Version, book of Hebrews, chapter 10, verse 11 and 12. And every priest indeed standeth day by day, ministering and offering oftentimes the same sacrifices, that which can never take away sins. But he, when he had offered one sacrifice for sins forever, sat down on the right hand of God. Which means it's no longer necessary to do sacrifices. Jesus was sacrificed, and that was sufficient. Now we are justified by faith for one sacrifice. So what happened that the temple was destroyed? No longer necessary. But then we found verses in the Bible where it's mentioned a third temple. Let's go and see. In the book of Ezekiel, American Standard Version, book of Ezekiel, chapter 47, verse 1 says, And he brought me back into the door of the house, and behold, waters issue out from under the threshold of the house eastward. Here house is referring to the temple. For the front door of the house was toward the east, and the waters came down from under, from the right side of the house, on the south of the altar. Here, Ezekiel is describing the waters are coming out under the temple. There is no reference that this happens on the first temple or the second temple. Therefore, we come to the conclusion that Ezekiel has been describing the third temple. As we can see right now, there is no temple at all. So this is one reference we found that a third temple is going to be built. There is another reference. If we go to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, from the American Standard Version, verse 3 and 4, we found, Let no man beguile you in any wise, for it will not be, except the falling away come first, and the of sin of be rebelling man, the son of perdition. He's talking about the Antichrist. He that opposes and exalteth himself against all that is called God, and that is worship, so that he sitteth in the temple of God, setting himself forth as God. This is important. This is making a reference to the Antichrist sitting in the temple. Titus didn't call himself God when he destroyed the temple. And he made a sacrifice, but it wasn't exactly on the altar. I think it was on the side of the altar, on the side of the temple. And the man of things referring to the Antichrist hasn't shown yet. So this is another reference about a future temple. So this is the third temple. So a third temple is going to be built. So a good question is, when the third temple is going to be built? There is no reference of God commanding Israelites or Jews to build the third temple. But there is one reference about the third temple which says something very interesting. If you go to the book of Daniel, I'm going to read it from the American Standard Version, book of Daniel, chapter 8, verse 13 and 14. It says the following: Then I hear a holy one speaking, And another holy one said to him, how long will it take for the vision to be fulfilled? The vision concerned the daily sacrifice, the rebellion that causes desolation, the surrender of the sanctuary, and the trampling underfoot of the Lord's people. He is talking how long it's going to take for the Jews to be without the temple. And he says, it will take 2,300 evenings and mornings. Then the sanctuary will be reconsecrated. This is one translation that is given, reconsecrated. Other version says to be sanctified. But let's see what he's talking about. The angel is asking how long it's going to take for the vision concerning the daily sacrifice. He's talking about the sacrifice under the temple, the rebellion that causes desolation. He's talking about the rebellion of the Jews against God, and the surrender of the sanctuary. He's talking about the destruction, the time that the sanctuary is going to be surrendered, and the trampling on the foot of the Lord's people. And for how long the Jews, the Israelites, are going to be mistreated. And he says 2,300 evenings and mornings. So we go to the books of Moses. If we go to the book of Ezekiel, there is a rule: 1 day for a year. So it's talking that all this time for 2,300 years, it's not gonna be a temple, or the temple is not gonna be accepted. At the end of this time, it's gonna be reconsecrated. But that's not exactly what it says. If we go and check, it says, when is that? Another interpretation is, then the temple shall be cleansed. But that is not correct, because when is that is translated as chas or chastis. So a better translation will be that after 2,300 years, the temple shall be justified, which means Jews are going to build the temple without the consent of God. They're just going to make it. God didn't ask for the temple. They're going to make it. But God is going to justify. The temple is going to say, okay, you build it. After this time, he's going to say, okay, I'll give you that. The temple is going to be okay. It's going to be accepted. That's what it means. The temple is going to be accepted. Okay, now I'm going to try to see when this is going to happen. When the temple is going to be justified, accepted. As we read back Matthew, I'm going to read it again, Matthew chapter 23 from the American Standard Version, verse 38. Jesus says, behold, your house is left unto you desolate. Verse 39, for I say unto you, ye shall not see me henceforth till ye shall say, blessed is he that comes in the name of the Lord. Is this implying that when Jesus is coming back, he is going to justify the temple? Maybe. This is this is what he's saying, but I'm going to show to you it's a little bit unclear. This is one possibility. He's coming back. He told him that the house is going to be abandoned, and now he's saying your house is accepted. It's totally understandable. But there is another, the Bible says, another interpretation. As we see in the book of Revelation, I'm going to read it from the American Standard Version. Book of Revelation, chapter 11, verse 1 and 2, it says, and there was given me a reed like unto a rod, and one said, rise and measure the temple of God and the altar, and then the worship therein. Verse 2, and the court which is without the temple live without, and measure it not, for it has been given unto the nations, and the holy city shall they tread underfoot for 42 months. Here is telling me something very important. 42 months is reference to 3.5 years. For 3.5 years, the Antichrist is going to persecute the church. So right from the beginning of the 3.5 years, right at the beginning for the 42 months, the temple is going to be separated. It's not going to be profaned. It's not going to be a profanation of the temple. And this is implying that the temple is justified. As you can see now, we have two references. Maybe it's when Jesus is coming back. Now, maybe it's when the persecution starts. And the reason of the persecution is this: the Antichrist is going to attack Egypt, and he's talking about the second war. And the second war, the armies on Euphrates, what is now Iraq, are going to attack the Antichrist. And it's going to, in this battle, they're going to kill 1/3 of the army. The Antichrist is going to blame the Christians. That's why in the following 3.5 years, he's going to persecute and he's going to eliminate the Christians. And this, at the beginning of this time, he's going to send troops to Israel, and the troops are going to surround Jerusalem. If you are in Jerusalem, in that moment, you have to run. You have to get out of Jerusalem. They're going to surround and they're going to get into Jerusalem, but they are not going to profane the temple. Another interpretation is, at the end of the 3.5 years, because there is no longer Christians, there is no more salvation by grace. There is no more salvation by faith. Therefore, has to be a new pact. And this new pact has to start when the church is gone, and this is at the end of the 3.5 years. So we got 3: when Jesus is coming back, or maybe at the beginning of the 3.5 years, or maybe at the end of the 3.5 years. It's hard to tell. So let me clarify something. Here I have a sketch to make it clear. From Adam and Eve to the time of Jesus died, salvation is by works. Salvation is by the sacrifice of lambs. For 2,300 years, salvation is by grace. After that, the millennium starts, and salvation is by keeping God's commandments and holding into the testimony of Jesus. So, I want to point something very interesting. Now that we are mentioning salvation by grace, is we see, if we go to the book of Revelation, chapter 6, I'm going to read it from the American Standard Version, verse 9, 10, 11 says, "And when we opened the 5th seal, I saw underneath the altar the souls of them that had been slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held." This is the people who has made a sacrifice to God. This is the people that when Jesus died, they supposed to resurrect. Let's keep on reading. "And they cried with great voice, saying, How long, O Master, the holy and true, dost thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth? And there was given them to each one a white robe." They were justified when Jesus died. Yes, they sacrificed a lamb. They do sacrifices in the temple, on the altar. They did sacrifice from the times of Adam and Eve. But it was when Jesus died that they were justified, and they were ready to resurrect. But that's not God's plan. And let me read it. "And he was said unto them, that they should rest yet for a little time, until their fellow servants also and their brethren, who shall be killed even as they were, should have fulfilled their course. That's why that resurrection didn't happen when Jesus died. That's why we don't have resurrection yet. We have to. They're waiting for the brothers that are gonna add to the number of people that's gonna be saved, and hopefully this explains why the temple is no longer needed, and why the temple is, when we don't no longer we have Christian, where there is no longer salvation by grace, the temple is justified. But again, it's going to be by works. It's going to be by keeping the commandments and believing in Jesus. I hope this clarifies. And just let me say one thing. Is we add 33, which is the year in which Jesus died, to 2,300 years, we got the year 2,333. In that year, the temple is going to justify. And like I said, is that year when Jesus is coming back? Is that the year when the church is going to start to be persecuted? Is that the year when the church and that persecution of the year ends? We still don't know. In my opinion, this is the year when Jesus come back, but that's my opinion. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day.